passe l'artiste. Super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De i semifinale igjen!
Hello and welcome to the Uninformed Handball Hour. It is EHF Euro time for the women. It's come very quickly, and starting in November, that little shift to earlier in the season continues to take us off guard, but don't be worried. We have a massive collection of experts on each team, each group coming your way across two big preview podcasts. And I'm, of course, joined by Chris O'Reilly. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm good. That's right, Alex. Yes, over the next two podcasts, we'll bring you hopefully everything you need to know leading into this Women's EHF Euro 2024 as we break it up in a different way, I would say. And if you're following us on Patreon, on patreon.com/handball hour, you will get access on Wednesday to both of the preview podcasts. If you're not, then you're going to have to wait just a little bit. We'll also have bonus podcasts throughout the championship, as well as our usual coverage of this, the first Women's Euro with 24 teams in it, Alex. So I would say we can all be a bit forgiven, experts and non-experts alike, if there are a few gaps in our collective knowledge as we embark on this new era of women's international handball.
Yeah, and it's clearly worked on the men's side, expanding the EHF Euros to more teams, because we've seen just the fact that these teams are competing at the highest level. They probably get more recognition in their home country for not only competing in qualifiers or competing against good teams, but actually being at a tournament. The support for the sport can be bigger for countries like Portugal, Faroe Islands, Slovakia, Ukraine, teams that haven't been regulars on the women's side. And hopefully, that keeps rolling and replicates what we've seen on the men's side, where, the likes of Italy and the Netherlands have gone to different levels. Georgia, these teams are producing really good players at the highest level. And hopefully that's something that can happen on the women's side. Obviously, a bit more difficult on the women's side. As always, the women's side of the sport, while it has huge kind of momentum in the big countries like Norway, Denmark, France, that in Denmark each year, the women's EHF Euros or tournament pretty much gets equal views to the men's side. But when you spread that out further, there's less of a drive for women's sport across all countries in Europe. But again, this is a good opportunity to expand that.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting, the context of this expansion. It kind of follows the regular pattern that the EHF have had, and I think has been quite a good way that they have made a major decision, like expansion of the Euro or bringing in the EHF Final Four for the Champions League. And then for the men's side first, and then 4 years later, they have brought in the women's change. Already back in 2018, it was floated, and it's quite funny. Well, funny. It's quite interesting that the Competitions Commission at the time was quite against the proposal to expand it, because they thought it would dilute the quality of the event. They thought finding a host would be difficult, because the bigger tournament, which we'll get to on this 3-nation hosting. And they figured that there wouldn't be too many countries that don't already qualify that would create a lasting legacy by qualifying, which back in 2018, they didn't have the men's Euro to look on and see the impact that has clearly had, as you just went through. So it will be really interesting to see the impact it has. It feels like it's been a constant discussion for us on the World Championship side, where they made the decision to expand the women's competition pretty much at the same time as the men's, which meant for some quite difficult watching in not only the preliminary round but also the main round. I don't think it will get that bad here, but I think that's one of the main things I'm looking forward to seeing in the first week of the competition, is just how far the newer teams, the likes of North Macedonia, the likes of Switzerland, Turkey, Faroe Islands, have been able to progress since the qualifications, because there were teams there that didn't manage to get a point against the top two teams in their group and qualified based on goal difference, which is not what we're seeing in the men's qualifiers at the moment. I don't have a definitive answer on how that's going to go. I can only imagine that these teams will have been given a huge boost by qualifying, and they will have closed the gap somewhat. I just hope that it will be enough. But yeah, there's 24 teams in the competition, 6 groups of 4, and we do have, as you mentioned, Alex, 5 experts coming up over the next 2 podcasts to tell us about some of these teams. And on this podcast, we're going to have in Danijela Vekic, who is a journalist for the EHF at these championships, and Inés Rein, who is an expert for Austrian TV and former Austrian international. The 3 host nations, Hungary, Switzerland, and Austria. Alex, I'll be based over in Hungary, in Debrecen, for pretty much my whole stay for the tournament. What do you think about this as a host trio? At least they're geographically beside each other. First key thing.
They are. It is funny, as looking back, and this tournament was originally going to be in Russia. That was the only bid in the initial bidding round. Russia then pulled out. Actually themselves, not because of the general pullout of the Russian teams from the tournaments across handball. And then it required some other bids, and in the end, it really feels like Hungary is just the home of women's handball. It's kind of between Denmark and Hungary for these all of these competitions, because there is such support, and I think Austria and Switzerland on their own couldn't quite sustain a tournament like this, but with the might of the Hungarian fans, there's a bit of meat to it. The final's still going to be in Vienna, but a great central location for it. 12,000-seater arena, the Wiener Stadthalle, will host the final weekend. So still a pretty big spectacle. I'm worried about the 12,000-seater arena in Switzerland, in Basel, that will be hosting games. I don't know how much Switzerland love handball, really. I think we'll have to see what crowds they can build for that, and more for flying into Switzerland, traveling in Switzerland, spending a week in Switzerland.
Spending all that money.
It's not easy for many of the countries. Spending all that money, as you know, I think I got a Burger King meal in Basel airport once that was, I think it was €42. So, that I'm a little bit worried that will deter some people from actually traveling to Switzerland. Hungary, Austria, both relatively easy locations for other teams traveling. They can travel by train, but those Switzerland games do worry me a little bit. But we'll have to see what kind of support they've managed to drum up in Switzerland, and it's a pretty good Swiss team. So that could be the draw here.
Only in their second tournament since they qualified in 2022, and we will go into them in a little bit more detail with Danijela. Just one thing on filling as many fans as possible into Basel. You're not to forget, of course, Alex, the greatest handball fans in the world, Faroe Islands, who will be coming in their droves, undoubtedly. There'll be at least a couple of thousand of them flying down, and they can certainly afford the Swiss prices, that's for sure. Austria, I'm super interested in as well. We'll speak to Inés as well later on about them in their first tournament since 2008. Austria, a medalist way back in 2006 as well, back in the glory days when they had Hippo as one of the greatest teams, if not the greatest team in world handball. But they've fallen quite a way from there. This feels like a big opportunity for them to kind of, I guess, inspire a new generation in a country where there is a solid, revolving door of handball players. They, however, in my humble opinion, potentially have the toughest route of all three home nations out of their group. When you consider they've got Norway, Slovenia and Slovakia. Norway, of course, strong favourites for that group. And Slovenia, even though Anna Gross has retired from international handball, it's not like they've become bad overnight. So I think that's going to be one tough thing also for the nation that's going to host it all the way through to the final, that Austria could be in danger of getting knocked out in the first round.
Just top two that go through each group. There's no third place consolation because of the main round structure. That I think is good. That is exciting. Even though, of course, we can discuss about the main round, but there is already peril for a lot of these teams. Maybe not the big ones, but nevertheless, it is it's going to be competitive from the start. So, Chris, every year, it's the same teams. Same teams. France, Denmark, Norway. Maybe a sprinkle of Sweden. Maybe a sprinkle of Montenegro. Is it going to be the same this time around?
I'm hesitant to say yes. At first glance, I can imagine why you would think yes. And I think a lot of the experts we'll hear from over the next two podcasts will also say yes. But I think what's keeping me a little bit optimistic here is that it is the classic first Euro after an Olympic Games cycle. And it's the first one of those we've had since 2016. I mean, we can't really count 2020-21 because there was only 3 years after Tokyo until Paris, and we all saw how many players decided to hold on there. And so I think there's going to be a lot of transition for quite a few teams. Like among the biggest favourites, there hasn't been too much transition, but I'm not going to completely count out, you take Norway, for example. They've lost basically their first choice backcourt. Yes, they still have incredible players like Henny Reistan, quite incredible to claim that she's not in the first choice backcourt. But if you think about like the legacy one over the last 5 years, like Christiansen, Oftedal and Merck, they're not there. So Sandra Toft not chosen for Denmark. France have held on to pretty much their main squad, but a few players have parted. I think it's gonna create a little bit of a bit more chaos when it comes to these teams as well. Also, the fact that we will have the main round of 2 groups of 6, where I think that is going to be seeing how the teams are coming together from the 6 groups. I think that's going to be quite interesting as well. Like you throw the likes of Netherlands and Germany in with Denmark and Norway, throw Sweden and hosts Hungary in with France and even teams like Czechia. And I think we'll get some surprises along the way. So I would be disappointed, Alex, if it is the classic 3 Scandinavian teams plus France.
I think you put it well there. I think that main round will be exciting. I think judging by the warm-up games, and we shouldn't read too much into that, but
that's all we have.
Hey, it's all we have. And before the Olympics, Norway played France a bunch of times, and Norway beat them, and that came out in the competition. So there's something to it, and it's been quite variable. That's my impression of the warm-up games. Norway have dominated. They've gone through the paces, but I think they're just such a tight unit that they can do that. But when you look at other teams, Spain have come back to life a little bit. Romania have been a bit of a disaster. Netherlands have been up and down with a couple of impressive wins, but also some dramatic losses to both Norway and Denmark. So I think that second level of team at the right level can bring kind of variability to that main round group. And it's, it will only be 4 teams that progress from there. So I do think in this case, there's a chance that anything can happen. Yeah. I'm not going to say that anything can happen, but there's a chance.
There's a chance that something can happen. We'll move on to the interviews now for this first preview podcast. We're going to hear in a bit from Inés Rein, a former Austrian international who will be an expert on Austrian TV during the championship. But before we speak to Inés, we'll speak to regular contributor and friend of the show, Danijela Vekic, about Group D with Denmark, Switzerland, Croatia, and Faroe Islands. So to talk with us about Group D, which will be in Basel with Denmark, Switzerland, Croatia, and Faroe Islands, is Danijela Vekic. How are you, Danijela?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Very good. Looking forward to getting this tournament started. It's
yes, of course.
A 24-team tournament, which we've mentioned on the podcast, and I think this group also has a team in it that is benefiting from the expansion of the tournament. But before we go into the 4 teams in a bit more detail, what's really standing out for you as you prepare your coverage for this group?
Well, for me, it was interesting some of the changes in the squads of the teams. And of course, Faroe Islands, who will be, I think, a surprise of the group. Maybe they're not going to be able to win, maybe, but I think they're going to put up a good fight and challenge, especially Switzerland and Croatia.
Okay, let's start with the Faroe Islands then, as you mentioned them there. They are one of the teams that really benefited from the expansion of the tournament. They qualified despite not getting a positive result out of the top 2 teams in their qualification group, but finished third with beating Luxembourg a couple of times. We saw the men's team back in January and the impact they had on the whole kind of handball zeitgeist with their participation. What do you think we can expect from this team coming into their first major tournament?
Yeah, I think that they're going to be a little bit the unknown opponent of the group because they're for the first time at the major competition, as you said, the first EHF EURO for them. A lot of players are playing in Faroe Islands. Some of them are the key players are near Denmark, of course. And I don't think they have such a great experience. But I do believe that, as you said, men's team was extraordinary in Berlin in January and men's EHF EURO, and they had such a great support from the fans. And I think women's team is going to have those fans again on the stands. I even think I saw on Facebook they have a travel agency organizing travel for all 3 games of the group to Basel. So I think that's going to be a little bit, maybe a bit, a push for the Faroe Islands. I don't think they have a good chance to win maybe in the group because we have Switzerland and Croatia who are well-structured team and of course Denmark. But I think they're going to put up a good fight and maybe challenge some of those teams. As we know, their biggest player and the key player is Jana Mittun. We know the last name, and I think it runs in the family, I guess, because not only Olli Mittun is her brother, but she's also cousins with Skipagotu. So I think we're going to enjoy her play.
Yeah, she's playing her club handball in Viborg at the moment. And yeah, there's a fair amount of players who are not just playing in Denmark, but playing at a pretty decent level as well. Yeah. So they're really developing the kind of the professional aspect of it. It feels like a very Danish group, because even the Swiss team has, trained in the Danish style of handball over the last few years. And then, of course, you have Denmark. So in that sense, maybe that will be a little bit comforting for the Faroe Islands, knowing that they'll be coming up against styles of handball that they're fairly, that won't be a big surprise for them. It maybe means they won't be a surprise themselves, but that they'll be able to settle into the rhythm.
That's definitely a plus for them, because let's say 3 out of 4 teams in group are going to play that Scandinavian handball with fast pace, a lot of fast breaks, and maybe they're going to be able to run with the teams. That's why I say they're going to be a real challenge for the teams in the group. Of course, Denmark is another level, but I think they can challenge both Switzerland and Croatia.
Let's speak about your home nation of Croatia. I think for me, it's a team that I always try not to have any predisposed idea about, because I'm never quite sure what Croatia will show up to a tournament. Now a week before the first games, what are you thinking?
Well, like you said, you never know what to expect from Croatia. And especially at this tournament, they're coming with a bit more different squad. There is no Chamila Michijevic, there is no Valentina Blažević, and the goalkeeper Teja Pijević. So that was a big surprise maybe for the people in Croatia. They were one of the cornerstones of the team in recent years, especially from that Euro 2020 when they won that historic bronze medal. There is no Ana Debelic, who returned after giving birth but got injured. There is no Andrea Šimara, who is also injured. So there is going to be a lot of different and new players who are emerging on the scene. But the good thing is that head coach Ivica Obrovan is also head coach in Podravka, who is playing EHF Champions League, and they really performed above their expectations this season so far. And you have from 20 players that are currently at the preparations, 12 are playing in Croatia. So for Croatia, maybe that's good, because we're finally developing players from Croatian league, compared to before we had a lot of players playing outside of Croatia, especially in Romania, Hungary, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so it's
really exciting about the Podravka this season. Like, they've been one of the positive surprise packages. It's a team that I think not too many people have expected too much from over the last couple of years. Are there any players in particular from that team or from the 20 that's preparing that you're really looking forward to seeing themselves being tested?
Well, when you compare to the team in 2020, you have 7 players now in the team. So those are sisters Posavec. One of them is in Podravka. Then you have Dejana Milosavljevic on the center back. Josipa Mamic on the left wing. She's also in Podravka. Then you have, I think it's Prkacin. She's also in Podravka, and she had really important role because at the start of the season, Tina Barašić was injured. And Larisa Klaus is also here. So from 2020, you have that structure is there, but then you have Beshen on the goal and between the posts, who is one of the top 5 goalkeepers in Champions League this season. That's really amazing for her. And I'm looking forward maybe to see Klara Birtic. She's also from Podravka, but she got injured against Storhamar, so I don't know if she's going to be able to play the EHF Euro. She's at the preparations, but it still depends if we're going to be able to see her right from the start.
From the sounds of it, you seem quite excited about this team.
I don't know, because as you said, Podravka is performing really well in the Champions League, and no one expected that. And I really want to see how that's going to reflect to the national team, because I think it's going to be a really great result for them if they progress further from the group. And I know it's going to be challenging, especially against Switzerland, who is the co-host, and they're playing at home. But I think, it's a base for something to come to the future, especially because they are all looking towards the Olympic Games in Los Angeles.
You mentioned the keeper, Lucia Beshen. I think the goalkeeper department for one of their main rivals for the top 2 spots, Denmark, is super interesting, where they announced their squad a couple of weeks ago, and Jesper Jensen decided to drop Sandra Toft. alongside some other big moves in the team. But Denmark, it seems, looking also to the next 4 years and
Yes.
to LA.
Yes. Well, I think that we were all surprised maybe when we saw there's no Sandra Toft on the list, but I know that she's disappointed. That's normal. But I read somewhere that she actually talked with Jesper before they announced the list, and he said it was an emotional thing, and of course she's disappointed. But I think that he's also looking for the future, and he said that they have three goalkeepers there in top 10 in the world right now, and it was hard to choose. But yeah, Altea and Anna are also amazing goalkeepers, and probably that's why he started, a new cycle maybe.
Yeah, Denmark coming fresh off the Olympic medal, which felt like a huge breakthrough for this kind of modern generation of Danish handball. What are you looking forward to seeing from this team at the championship?
For me, they're one of the favorites for the title, of course, like always. I'm looking forward to see, because there are no other players. There is no Louis Burgard, who is also injured. There is no Mete Tramborg, so he didn't invite Elma Halilovic. So he's only going with one left wing. So I think it's going to be interesting to see some of those changes in the team. But still, they have an amazing experienced players, and they're just going to perform their style of play, fast handball with good defenses, and I think they're going to have 3 wins in the group right at the start. So
one slight worry, I think, was Christine Jorgensen, who seemed to be in a bit of a race against time. Whether she'll be fit enough to play at the Euro, I think, is not 100% fixed, because she also seems like a player who, is naturally taking more responsibility for this team, and is kind of a face of the national team heading into the next cycle. Just 26 years of age, but already over 120 caps for the team, which is quite incredible. How she's been involved over the years. Would an injury like that shift your expectations of the team, or do you think they just have such a solid squad all around?
But I think they have a solid squad all around. I mean, yes, she's amazing, and we already saw that in Metz. She's now injured, but I think they have so much players that can come in, that they know the system, and I mean, they have a lot of great left backs also, and I mean, the whole back court line of Denmark is amazing. So I don't think it's going to be that much of a challenge for them if she's not going to be fit. But as I said, I think they're going to have 3 straight wins in the group. So, maybe she even doesn't have to play from the start, and she can be ready for the main round.
Let's speak a bit about the co-hosts, Switzerland. When they competed at the Euro 2 years ago, I think, were one of the darlings of the tournament in the group phase in terms of how they performed. And all the talk was about, wait till we see this team in 2 years' time when they co-host the championship, that they will be, a little bit older, a little bit more ready. Still an incredibly young team, probably together with the Faroe Islands, 2 of the youngest in the entire tournament. How do you see their progression over the last couple of years in preparation for this home championship?
Well, I think that most definitely they progressed, even though they had, in 2022, they came with Martin Albertsen as a head coach, who was structured and was leading them for quite some time. And it was all about this EHF Euro. But as we know, he took over FTC, and then they had to find new coach. So now they have Knut Ova Joa from 2023, and he's a Norwegian. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So they still have that Scandinavian influence on the game, but they're going to have a little bit more different style of play. Just the approach. And I think they really progressed very good with him in the last year and a half. As you said, they have a lot of young players, but they are coming with a lot more experience, and still they have their structure of 3 key players who are still there. Has going to be really great support for those young players like Kerstin Kunding, Lisa Frey, and the goalkeeper Manuela. So I think they're gonna perform even better, I think, than the last time. And especially when you're playing at home, it can be an additional advantage for you.
Also, a part of maybe their development you mentioned in style is that a lot of the players have spread their wings a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, you have the likes of Emma Negger, who went to Vipers. You have players who went to Germany, which you would expect, but then also to France and to Sweden as well. So you've got, you know, not very much like almost like a club team, which was the feeling from 2 years ago. Also, when you see the training they were doing on such a regular basis, but have broadened things a little bit, and maybe that has kept it a little bit fresh for them. What do you think when it comes down to the wire facing against Croatia and Denmark, knowing they need to get a positive result against one of them because only the top 2 make it through?
You know, the game between Switzerland and Croatia, I think it's the last game of the group. So that's gonna be the key game for both Switzerland and Croatia, I think, because I don't think, of course, everything is possible in handball, but I don't think they can look to gain a win against Denmark, because Denmark is really another level. So, and I think they could get points against Faroe Islands. So I think it's going to be all down to that last game between Switzerland and Croatia. And we know at the last EHF Euro, they had a draw. So I really don't know. It's 50-50, maybe 60-40 chance for Croatia, or 50-50 for me. I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be a really, really great game for me.
It's really one of the highlights, I think, of the preliminary round, and lucky you that you'll be there to get to enjoy it
again.
Well, enjoy it or write on it. I don't know if it's going to be enjoyable with the stress. But before we let you go, something we're doing to all our contributors, the classic predictions time. Who would be your tips for the 3 medals and MVP?
And that's a hard question. I mean, I think for the medals, it's always Norway, Denmark, France. Let's just say something like that. For the MVP, I have no idea. Because there are so many good players, especially in those top teams. And of course, you have always there Hungary and Netherlands. You never know. And yeah, I'm looking forward, because there are so many players who are also in the Champions League on a high level, like Sarah Buchtit, line player for France, and then you have, I mean, there are too many players. I don't know who I'm going to choose for MVP, really, for now.
Nice.
No answer for that.
That's fair. Danijela, thank you so much, and lovely to get your contribution. And we'll see you at the Euro.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Joining us to speak about the Austrians and a little bit more about Group E is Inés Rein. How are you, Inés?
Hi, I'm fine. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for joining us just before you head off to Innsbruck to cover the first round of this Women's EHF Euro. And it's a host tournament for the Austrians. Very exciting to have them back in the Euro for the first time in a long while. 2008 was the last time they featured. And as someone yourself, Inés, who has played alongside a lot of the Austrians, can you give us a little bit of insight into how the players are feeling right now? I guess you've had a chance to follow some of them in the build-up to the tournament. Must be really exciting for them.
Well, we know already since a long time that we are going to host this European Championship. So this project did not just start after the last big championship, after the World Championship. It started already long before. And it is so exciting to see how the team progressed. We had a change of the head coach recently. And this, of course, had a big impact on the team. But I think it was also a very positive change. And I think the team is now ready to compete on a very high level.
tell us a little bit more about the change of head coach from what you know anyway on the outside and following the team as a TV expert. What are the kind of changes we can expect in this team?
Well, if you let me, I would start maybe with something not about the game directly. Monique Teisemann is a coach that is very interested in the physical shape of the players. So until now, the Austrian team was always very limited because we don't have many players. And if a good player or one of the very good players playing in the national team gets injured, then this always had a huge impact on the team. So right now for the European Championship, for example, all players are fit or almost all players are fit. And this is already a big change compared to the previous championships. This is one impact that she had, that she's really taking care. If a player is not fit to train or to play, then she is not going to train or play. And the result is that for the upcoming games, everybody will be on. Her trainings are very hard, so she's really pushing the team to the limit. And we could also see that she's trying new methods. She's really playing a modern handball. We saw her at one game play a 5-1 defense against 7 players. So you can see that she's trying a lot with the team, and that the team and her are trying to find a good way to connect and to get the best out of both sides.
Monique Teisemann is a super interesting character as well. I've come across her a few times in different capacities, and she's coached some big teams both in the men's and women's side of the game. Quite interesting that she's taken on this challenge as well before the Euro. As you said, Inés, it's been a long build-up. This project for Austria to be one of the main host for the Euro has been a long time coming. Had you noticed over the years as well? I mean, it was only last season you were playing with Hypo, Niederösterreich, where there was a bunch of national team players in the squad, that those players who knew they were in with a chance of being in the squad really stepped up their development as well, because I guess it is something really different. First of all, knowing that you're going to be in a championship no matter what as a team, but also having the pressure and the privilege as well to be a home nation.
Yes, of course. I mean, for every player, this is a big thing. And I know from my ex-teammates, for example, that they have been preparing not only on a team level, but also on an individual level very hard. So players who would join the national team, for example, they sometimes would do extra workouts in the morning. Because with Hypo Niederösterreich, we sometimes had double sessions, but sometimes not. So those players, as the Austrian Championship is not the strongest one, sometimes on the day after a game, they would had an extra training. They would go for a run. They would go to the gym. So there has been a huge sacrifice on an individual level as well.
And for this team, they have played in World Championships recently, but maybe there's a few people who wouldn't know about this team in and out. Can you give us a little bit of insight into some of the players we should be looking forward to seeing?
Well, of course, we have even Champions League players. So there are the Pancha sisters who play at Crima-Kata Ljubljana in the Champions League. They were since always, I would say, one of the players where we knew they could achieve big things. And it's really exciting to see that they're now playing on such a Then there's, of course, Sonja Frey, who is very known internationally because she played in big teams like Esbjerg, for example, or also Thüringer HC. We have, and for her, probably this is going to be, very probably, this is going to be the last championship. So I think for her personally, this will be a big thing as well, looking at her emotions and everything, being at a home event, knowing that this will maybe be your last one, must be very exciting. Then we have, for example, Petra Platze. She is a player that played in France, in Romania, also in the Bundesliga in Germany. So she's very experienced. She's a goalkeeper. And on the other hand, knowing that we have players like Sonja Frey and Petra Placek, we also have these newcomers like the Pancha sisters or Lena Ivanchuk, plays in the Croatian league. I think this is what the team makes unique, that you have these experienced players and you also have young players who push and bring also a good ambience into the team. So I know they have been preparing since a long time, and I know that for all of them it's very special, and I know that they want to achieve big things at this European Championship. So the preliminary round is definitely not the last stop if they could choose.
Okay, that brings us on nicely to looking at that preliminary round. In Group E, it is a tough one, and with the expansion of the Women's Euro to 24 teams, it means that only 2 teams progress in each group. They're in there alongside Norway and then their neighbours in Slovenia and Slovakia. Norway coming in, of course, is one of the major favourites to pick up the title and pick up a medal. And then you've got the derby matches where Austria are going to have to get a result or two in order to progress. What do you think of their chances overall in this group, and where do you see their potential to get a draw or a victory over their neighbours?
I think to finish first of the group is not really possible, having Norway in the same group. But of course, everybody is going to fight for the second place. The first game is against Slovakia. This team is young. They qualified for this tournament just because they were placed best third place team. And I think the last time they have been at a European Championship was 10 years ago, 2014. So they're clearly the underdog of that group. But this is also something that makes them more dangerous, I would say. They have players that play in European leagues, like, for example, the European Cup or the European League, but they, for example, don't have players that play in the Champions League. So you don't have a team here with big stars. What they have is that they're very motivated because it's the first Euro in a long time. They're very disciplined, and you could see already from previous games that they're progressing more and more. They played in the qualifiers against Ukraine. They lost at the first game. They drew on the second game. And now just recently, they played again against the team and they won. So you can see that their team performance is getting better and better. And I'm sure they're going to come to the European Championship to win. To win at least 1 or 2 games, yeah. Then on the other hand, you have Slovenia. And this, honestly, I'm very excited to see this and this team, because Slovenia is like a box of chocolate. Right now, we don't know what to expect exactly. The Olympic circle, let's call it, is finished. And once we have the Olympic Games, there's always, or normally there uses to be changes in teams. And Slovenia is one of that teams where we can see big changes. I think only 6 players on the squad list of the Olympic Games stayed in the team. So we have, for example, Anna Gross, who was at the last European Championship one of the top 10 goal scorers that left the team. We have Omoregi that is not joining. They're just big names that retired from the national team or make it. So for them, it's really a new era, I would say. They have to reinvent themselves. But in the end, it's still Slovenia. They have a lot of players playing in the Champions League with Prima Carter, for example, and I'm sure they are going to fight for the second place as well. And then last but not least, there is Norway. And what should we say about Norway? I mean, they have been medalists in the last 3 or 4 big tournaments. Of course, also they have big losses because Nora Morg, as we know, is pregnant. We're very happy for her. And then Stina Oftedal retired. So those are 2 big losses, I would say, in the team. But the thing with Norway is that they have so many great players that I'm sure that they can make up with this.
Considering how tight the group is going to be, particularly in that race for second place, what would you consider a successful tournament for Austria to be then? Does it very much have to be them getting into the main round?
It would be very successful. It will be very successful if Austria gets to the main round. Okay. That's for sure. And if then in the main round even they achieve to win 1 or maybe even 2 games, then this will be unique, I'm sure.
We've seen the impact that Austria's men's team have been able to have with their relative success over the last few years, particularly with a home Euro they had a few years ago as well. As somebody who's been involved in Austrian handball for so long and knowing the community as well, how big is this for the women's side that they're going to be co-hosting a major championship like this?
Well, for the women, of course, you see how the male team does such a good job. And like the last European Championship, now Germany was amazing. Nobody expected Austria to come so far. So, of course, what the women's team now want to do is just to connect on that point and say, okay, they came very far. So we are going to try. We're going to try to inspire everyone in Austria and show how big handball can be here as well. The men national team had a huge development, I would say, and this is something where the women's team needs to improve or maybe just get a little bit more of support. So where better to start than at a home Euro.
Before we let you go then, Inés, last question that we're asking all of our expert guests, the dreaded predictions for the medals, so gold, silver and bronze, and who you think the MVP will be. If you're going to say Henny Reistad, then one other name as well.
Yeah, well, Henny Reistad, she has been the MVP, I think, the last European Championship. It would be almost a little bit boring to have her again, but on the other hand, what can you do if you just have such a great player? For the medals, I start there. Of course, Norway, France, and Denmark, those three, I think, will be on the top as well. I think Sweden has a very bitter taste because they have been fourth place lately always. So I'm sure they're going to fight for that again. And then the MVP. I must say I'm still a huge fan of Estelle Nzaminko. For me, she's such a complete player. And it would not surprise me if she gets the MVP this time.
Great answer. I like that one. Thank you so much, Inés Rein. Have a great trip and enjoy the preliminary round as well. Looking forward to hearing your expert analysis as well on Austrian TV.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you to Inés and to Danijela, speaking there about two of our three home nations. The only one we haven't gone into in much detail yet, Alex, is Hungary, the team that, of the three, you'd feel have the best medal chance. They were so close to getting into the medal contention at the Olympics. It feels like this team is finally coming of age after many, many disappointing generations of players. It's a home championship for them up until the end of the main round. Is it time to believe in them?
Yes. It is time to believe in them. Hungary beat France in a friendly game. And that is already more than... It shows an insane level of progress for this team. I think Petra Simon is a kind of real superstar or real budding star. And it's difficult to talk about Hungary because they've disappointed us so many times. But it is a team that is fun to cheer for. I think there's everything about the team is exciting. You know, they have a really good youth pipeline. They have a good structure. They continue to improve and they have the fans. So it always feels like Hungary deserve more than they get in the handball world. But in general, kind of handball in Hungary seems to be taking steps. And I think the investment in the teams that we've talked about before is coming true. It's not just what kind of the talent pipeline that they have. I think they do have investment in the squad, the setup, things like physios, sports psychologists. I believe that would be one of the best setups for any team in this competition due to the investment in sport in Hungary. And that makes a difference at these type of tournaments. And you just have to hope the best version of Katrina Kluivert shows up on the day, because that is always an impact. But I think they should be hunting for that at least that fourth spot in the semi-finals.
Yeah, what I like about the team is also a number of players have taken the step to go outside of Hungary as well in the last couple of years. It's not the classic case of, a bunch of players who are either starting for Ferencváros or on the bench for Győr and just don't have what it takes to get it done against other nations. You have some big players like Noemi Pastor on the line who's gone to Cseszámeth Bucuresti. Faluvegi on the wing has gone to Ludwigsburg. You have in goal as well Sophie Gemeri who's gone to Metz alongside Petra Vamos. So you have a key players there who are getting really good experience. And I think it's not the worst thing for these players. We're seeing it a little bit on the men's side as well, to get out of Hungary and to kind of broaden their horizons a little bit before playing with the national team. They're also in the, not the kinder side of the draw, in my opinion, but the more open one. The one that might be a little bit more of a bloodbath in the main round in terms of not having necessarily the very best teams, but literally potentially having 6 teams there that could beat one another every single round. And this is me jumping a little bit forward, but in this main round, potentially having Sweden, Hungary, Romania, Czechia, France, and Poland. Like 6 teams that, on a given day can take points off one another. And I think that would really suit Hungary, also based on the fact you said they managed a good result against France in the warm-up matches and were so close against Sweden in that Olympic quarterfinal, that they have a lot to play for here in this home tournament. And I think we're all going to be excited to see them go well. And I really hope, seeing as I'll be in Debrecen the entire time, I hope they go well, because there's nothing worse than a home nation like Hungary not doing well and seeing everyone say, never mind, we're not going to come and watch the games. Yeah, I think they'll be in with a shot for sure.
What about your favourite Sweden?
Oh, it's, it was 10 years ago in my first Women's EHF Euro that I was in Debrecen for the first round, actually. I was trying to think back, was it the exact same time? But no, Alex, as you mentioned at the top of the show, that tournament began on the 7th of December, not the 27th or 28th of November. So it really has gone back, not just in our minds, but they really have shifted these tournaments back. Yeah, and in that tournament, that was the last time Sweden got themselves a medal, getting bronze at the Euro, where Bella Gulden was not only the top scorer, but also the MVP, doing something very rare in handball awards. And yeah, it feels like it is a really good time for them to pick up a medal. There was a good handball diaries out a couple of weeks ago with Yamina Roberts, who is, as we all know, an absolute superstar.
Is she?
She is. She's brilliant. Like she's magnificent. She is amazing.
She's magnificent. I'll agree with that. But I think since her move to Vipers, at club level, she hasn't been magnificent. And it's only...
No, she won a Champions League for them. Together with
a lot of pretty good players. But it seems like those takeover games for Yamina Roberts, where she just really takes over the game, destroys defenses, rips apart defenses and hearts. They're happening less and less.
That's true. But by superstar, I mean in a kind of a personality thing. She is like she is the big name for Sweden, and I think she has caught a lot of people's hearts. She's breaking other nations' hearts, but in Scandinavia, she's won a lot of people over the years. But my point anyway is that I think for someone like her in this team, they're done with losing bronze medal matches. And they're like, well, there's no better time after the Olympics to pick up one. I think so. I wouldn't have them as a much like in the Olympics. I didn't have them very high in my power rankings. I didn't have them as a real semi-final contender, but I think that suits them quite well. So I think there will be less expectation again about this team, but they are with, you know, T-Rex there, I think, coming in and growing up big time for them in a good spot. They have lost Nina Koppang though, which is a big loss for them. Big loss. And I think that maybe in that right back position will hurt them a little bit. But yeah, I think they'll be a top 6 anyway. They'll be battling in there. You know, probably third in the main round group. So no, they're not getting a medal. It's the short answer at the end of the long answer.
That's us for the first podcast of the EHF Euro preview on the women's side. The tournament is probably already started when you're listening to this, but you can always listen to previews and judge our opinions and expert opinions. So if you want to hear the next part of our preview, do go to Patreon/Handball Hour. You can sign up for just €3 a month to hear the preview ahead of everyone else, as well as all the bonus podcasts that will come your way. There will also be a fantasy league set up for the Women's Euro, the Hold It competition, a classic competition that we hold. It's going to be fun. It's usually fun. We'll figure out a great prize for the winner of that. It's a great time to join, because if you join now, you also can keep going for the Men's World Championship in January. And we know that the World Championship is a lot of fun as well, and doesn't have as good coverage as the Euros. I have to say, you know, Euros, EHF does a good job, but you'll need us for the World Championship. You'll want us for the EHF Euros, and we'll all have a great time over the next couple of weeks.